welcome to the Product Science Podcast, where we're helping startup founders and product leaders build high-growth products, teams, and companies through real conversations with people who have tried it and aren't afraid to share lessons learned from their failures along the way. I'm your host, Holly Hester Riley, founder and CEO of H2R Product Science. This week on the Product Science Podcast, I'm sharing a conversation with Dean Peters. Dean is principal consultant and trainer at the 280 Group. Driven by a passion to replace pain points with user delight, Dean Peters has provided product management expertise across a variety of domains and technologies for nearly 2 decades. From large enterprises such as IQVIA and Citrix to startups such as Dude Solutions and Seven Lakes Technologies, to merged and acquired companies such as Aprimo and McClatchy, Dean has helped teams self-organize and businesses deliver on the promise of highly usable and valuable outcomes. Welcome, Dean.
Hello, Holly. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I think I've got enough coffee and we're rolling.
Excellent. What part of the world do you live in?
So I'm in this little suburb near Raleigh, next to Raleigh, called Apex, North Carolina. We call it the peak of good living. We know this is true because it says so in all 3 of our water towers.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. So how's the tech scene down in North Carolina?
Especially in Raleigh. We've got a little bit of tech going on here. I think we had that IBM thing going on for a while. We've had Microsoft slumming around here for a while. And we've had some other companies like Epic Games. And, I think ShareFile had a stint here before it got acquired by Citrix. And then we got this Pendo thing, this Pendo startup, which we think might have some legs to it that might do pretty well. So we're doing all right here in Raleigh.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have an affinity for North Carolina because that's where my dad is from. He's from Durham.
Oh,
Exactly.
just up the road where they do baseball and barbecue, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I grew up when we would go visit family going to Bullock's, which I think is in Durham, and having barbecue there. So
Already good, because last thing, I was just in Kansas City last week, and I kept promising my wife, I will not get in a fight over barbecue. I will not get in a fight over barbecue, even though some of the people in my class kept asking me about barbecue. But we avoided any incidents like the one we had in Austin a few years ago, which should be expunged and off the record by now.
okay, we'll pretend it is
Yeah.
and keep going.
Yeah.
Have you always been in the North Carolina region, or did you come there from somewhere else?
No, I grew up around the DC area, though I spent a lot of my summers in New York City with all my crazy Greek relatives up there. After college, which was down here in North Carolina, I went up to New York City for about 10 years and then had enough of that, went down to DC for a while, had enough of that, and now I'm pretty much cemented here in the Raleigh-Durham area.
Got it. Cool. I'd love to hear a little more about how you got to where you are today in product.
Yeah, it's interesting here because someone asked me how I got into product here. And I said, a lot of people get into it. I was weird in that, like a lot of things, I didn't so much either get into it or break into it. I curiously wandered in through the side door. Apparently, somebody left the side door open. And I'm like, whoa, things look good. What are they cooking in there? Looks pretty good here. But yeah, I was, at that time, was a software engineer. I had been doing some interesting projects for some large organizations that you may know about. I was a part of some contractor companies that did things for like Department of Defense and then later the CDC, just some small projects like, the first metric identification for frequent passengers when I was doing the DoD contract, and then was one of the lead engineers and the integrators for the NHANES, which is this large national study of our nation's health, which sends out all these trailers with devices and has volunteers. And so I was the lucky engineer and integrator who got to connect all the devices that collected human specimens and analyze them and then push the data up to the cloud. And it was actually during that particular project I was continually dissatisfied with user interface. Started with, hey, there's this thing, this UX thing here. And a few years before, through some, misplacement or act of good luck, we got sent to these classes that were being run by Apple on user experience. So here I already had user experience on the mind, and I'm thinking, how do we make the user experience better on this national study? And then from there, I didn't realize what I was doing. I was getting into things like, what is the job we're trying to get done here? Why are we adding all these things? Because you'd have these people from these government agencies come in. We need to add this bell, this whistle, do this. And I'm like, aren't we just trying to get some data here? Or aren't we just trying to get someone through the border here? And so I was continually in these conversations where I was challenging on behalf of simplicity and usability here. And so that's what got me into the area of exploring more, of going past the general thing is we learned about UX and started learning more about who's actually going to be at the other end of this, who's actually going to be using it, what job are they trying to get done. And at some point, someone who had been working with me in the marketing department at both these organizations, we were just chatting over coffee one day, and he goes, Dean, have you thought about going into product management? I go, I'm not sure what that is. And he goes, you don't? You've been doing it for the past year and a half, pretty much, but you're writing code too. And I'm like, oh. I was just finishing up my master's at night school and getting over at Hood College there. And so started exploring that. Next thing you know, I'm at School Dude Solutions as running their product management for them. And the rest is the sort of history there. I started there, cut my teeth there, made a lot of mistakes, a lot of learning there. What helped me out, though, was the fact that I've always, whatever reasons, been able to build great teams. And so they were basically build a team of product people for us. So if I had to hire them and bring people in, I had to actually know what it was. So even early then, voices like Ken Norton and a few others were very influential, and start studying those voices like Marty Kagan, reading up on those, reading all the bloggery that was going on. And from there, just kept learning because I kept enjoying it and kept wanting to do it. So just followed a typical path. You go from, got dumped in. I was going to be the product manager, and they said, build a team, which is unusual for a first time out. Then Great Recession hit, and then took the normal path, product manager, then doing platform product management, then moving up. And this is my last few stints here in a more senior role. But all along the way, just learning the craft of it. And I think that was influential. And along the way, there were certain skill sets that intrigued me. Coming from a technical background, like, for example, I started cutting my teeth with analytics all the way back when I was at Dude Solutions, and then got that on steroids at McClatchy, being a news organization.
So tell us more about some of these companies. What did Dude Solutions do?
Well, at the time it was School Dude, and then it was Dude Solutions, and most recently it got renamed and rebranded to Brightly. But I got there when it was 24 people in the US and about 20 people in Malaysia. It was a growth stage startup at the time, and they basically provided SaaS software for school districts and universities to run their facilities, keep the plumbing running, keep the lights on, keep the roof from leaking, things like that. And along the way, they had that nice model where, okay, our maintenance direct product is going through it's at its peak of its life cycle. We need to bring in other products to keep the revenue bumped. So they were bringing in, expanding their portfolio, and I helped them expand their portfolio in the various areas. So while I was there.
Okay. Oh, tell us more about that.
Yeah. So it was a matter of, okay, what are some of the other needs we have? What are we hearing from these school districts? What are we hearing from these universities here? So products like IT Direct were launched, which was helping them manage and handle all the various IT needs they would have. Energy Direct, which was the energy product, to help them keep their energy use low. And then a lot of also some of their API services that we were providing, because some of these very large school districts wanted to have a lot of this information piped into their accounting systems. So we built the services there.
I'd love to dive in a little bit more to launching a product in a startup of that stage. One of the things that I've often found is, and I'm sure you've seen this, is that like the second big launch often fails. That by the time a company gets to the stage where their first product has found product market fit, they start making mistakes they didn't make the first time around. And I'm curious to hear how that went when you were working with Dude Solutions.
Yeah, it goes back and forth those names, and I apologize for that. Like I said, I got there as School Dude, it moved to Dude Solutions, and like I said, now it's Brightly. And when I got there, they actually had a couple products there that were doing okay, but there was one product there that really intrigued me, which was their Facilities Direct product, which allowed them to rent their school facilities for after hours events to various community interests. So it's the Boy Scouts, whether it's a church, whether it's a soccer league, whatever, they were renting out their after hours facilities. And this was a way for school districts to make revenue without having to raise a bond in referendum or raise taxes. I was challenged with, we've got a little more churn. We aren't getting the traction that we like. I think this is what got me into down the analytics path, because as we talked to some people on the exit interview, we started getting the feeling that hearing things that it was a little too complex, still easier to work with paper or Excel spreadsheets, are being our biggest competitor at that time. So, and this was before we actually had a lot of systems like we have now. So still leading on my product background, looked into our SQL databases, went into our web logs, and tried to figure out what's happening here. That for me, as I was studying and reading up on various people, how they do things, the thought was, we have this 4-step process we're running people through to go ahead and register their event. And I thought, what would the data look like if we were doing this like an e-commerce, a shopping cart, and someone was abandoning the cart? And approaching the data that way, we found a lumpiness. Actually, I found some divots in the data that I thought were alarming because you would see pretty much everyone step one, step two, not a problem. It was when step three when I started to see a lot of fallout and looked at a little more data, shaped that a bit more. We had these annual events in Myrtle Beach, University, where a lot of the customers would come down, experimented with some of those ideas along that, and realized it was just really just an act of simplicity. We just needed to make things a little more streamlined. There was a lot of complexity and a lot of nuance in Maintenance Direct there, and justifiably. They had brought it over into Facilities Direct, but without understanding they didn't need to bring all that complexity in. So when we removed the complexity, the product did much. And we had the same thing with our Trip Direct product. It seemed that there was a disconnect. This was a product to manage not fleets of buses or other transportation, but really to deal with the events that were associated. So I have a baseball team or a softball team that needs to get from point A to point B. And people in sales were trying to pitch this to the people in the garages who are trying to manage their fleet. And it was never supposed to be a fleet management. So that was less about modifying the product. The product was fine. It was nice. It was simple. It was pretty direct. What was failing was, it's what I learned, like you better have connections with sales and marketing to make sure that we're aiming it at the right party there.
Yeah. So tell me a little more about like the nitty gritty of that. So how did the sales relationship look during the time when they were selling it to do something it wasn't supposed to do? And how did you fix it?
Part of the problem was I just didn't know how they were doing that. That was my naivete. Like I said, I took this in here and it was just a matter of wanting to be in some of these conversations. So it was actually in the course of going to that dude university and just talking to customers who already owned our maintenance product, already owned our facilities rental product here, who we were talking to about the possibility of upselling them to your energy product, our capital planning product, all these different parts of the product line. And just like I said, interesting conversations. And then I realized that we were talking to the wrong people. So I talked to a few more people in sales and they're like, oh yeah, we're trying to sell to this person. And then I had someone saying, hey, I'm trying to sell it to this person in this fleet. And it dawned on me like, whoa, has anyone ever told them? And it was just a matter of we just got ourselves together at some point and said, hey, maybe we don't want to talk to the fleet manager with this product here. It's likely the wrong audience for this product here. It's not, we're really designed to sell this product there. And we just got on the same page. It was just a communications thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I teach that now. I've done it for years, but that was where I wandered in through the side door on that. Oh, wow, we're missing a connection here.
Those second, third, fourth, whatever number launches at Dude, how successful were they?
Like I said, I think overall the product was very successful. Like I said, the company grew wonderfully. During the Great Recession, we had the same problem a lot of companies had. A lot of it was because they were funding through bank loans as opposed to getting venture. So they finally had to go the private equity route and so forth. But by then, like I said, I'd already moved on there. But I think they did really well. Like I said, they got private equity. They grew very big. Now they're brightly and even bigger here. So the company had a great trajectory here. A lot of that was due to a lot of great leadership by just some really great executive leadership who allowed there to be growth culture there. In other words, they didn't get in the way of the culture and really helped keep us focused on those things that mattered.
So what did that look like? What were some of the ways that they supported the growth culture?
They just made it fun to work. For example, I was able to learn more about analytics. I was able to do some experimentation there. We had some failures. We had some bumps in the road, but it wasn't like some places I've been where you've had screaming vice presidents screaming in people's face, where you've had people who are just not listening to the rank and file. And I think the biggest thing is not only they want us to keep communicating with each other, they wanted us to keep communicating with the customer. It was very customer focused. And so just this constant reminder that we love our customers and we want them to love us. So we need to just keep making sure that we're connected with them. And I think that was really healthy. Great place to work.
So one of the things that often is a challenge for teams that are trying to stay connected to the customers in a B2B type of environment is fights over who owns the relationship with the customer and a difficulty between sales or account management. I'm curious, did you encounter any of that there?
No, actually, we didn't. We were actually more invited. Hey, I got a sales call. Come along. I've been at those organizations. All right. Later in my career, I was at organizations where there were some guerrilla tactics we had to use to talk to customers. Where it's no, you can't talk to the customer, you might foul this up. And that sort of surprised me because, like I said, I had been blessed to be in a culture where if you needed to speak to customers, if you needed to create a bench of early adopters, it was really easy to do there early on. I don't know how that culture is now. I haven't been there since 2010. I don't know how it's changed since then. I would hope it's still the same there, but I know what you're talking about. I've been at those other organizations where it's very difficult to get into either customers or potential customers. And I've always found that strange.
So what do you do when you encounter it?
I've seen some interesting techniques and tactics. I knew one product manager at one of these larger organizations I work with. She's still there, so I won't say the organization, but she started inviting herself to various Facebook groups and meeting professionals who might be the end user and creating relationships there. And so that's how she got early adopters. When I was working at Citrix, one of the things I did was in the leverage Pendo's ability to go ahead and put a little in-app message saying, would you like to speak to the product manager on search? Let me have your email address. So let me know who you are. And I was able to get names and email addresses of people who are the customers there who are interested in talking. And so there are ways of doing this. And like I said, there are company events. Some of these companies, if you can get to them, you can start talking to clients. So it's possible. I think now in retrospective, I probably landing at some of these organizations, I would work even harder to create some relationships. But as I tell my classes, don't make the first time someone in sales or legal sees you being the first time you need a favor. So you might want to take some of these company events and start meeting people. I'll bring up Citrix again. I knew that I needed to meet more people and get connected better to the customer problem. And they had these huge events here. And so I remember one of the first events, I realized that maybe I need to get to know who's in the customer support group. So asked some of my coworkers, do they cluster in that particular company? A lot of the support people were clustered over in one corner of this large area. And I just walked in and introduced myself and started conversations and making friends and learning from them. And that gave me another avenue into some customer insights. So there are ways of doing that. Again, it's a lot more of the soft skills and the social skills. You just need to be able to walk right up to somebody and say, hi, I don't want anything. I just want to get to know you. And you'd be surprised, like I said, how much that could pay off. Get to know people if you're new at all. If you're in product, you've just been a product manager, now you're a director, you've just landed somewhere, I might tell them, start making friends. Let the first time they see you be in a more social setting or a more casual setting than when you need something. Just might go a little easier.
Yeah, it's so important to build those relationships. It really helps a lot.
Yeah.
We've got a new product board guest for you. His name is Miro Remias. I asked Miro to tell us a little bit about his background and how they do customer feedback at Product Board. And here's what he had to say.
So my name is Mira, not the board, but a person. And I'm a senior product manager at the Product Board, helping other product people to build better products by really making their job easier and more enjoyable, which is fun in the end. So I've been with the company for more than 1.5 years, but previously I was Product Board as a customer with 3 different organizations. So I've seen the best of both worlds. Officially based on job titles, I've been in the PM space for more than 6 years, but have been helping them build better products my whole career through various customer-facing roles where I was listening to customer needs and finding solutions for those, typically in the form of workarounds or customizations when the product was not allowing such use case. I love talking to customers, hearing their stories. So we take customer feedback very seriously. It's one of the key ingredients, I would say, for success when building products that solve real customer needs or problems. There are various touch points we have with customer feedback. It comes from many sources, be it a support conversation, recording of success, quarterly business review, or sales pitch conversation, customer reviews on the website, satisfaction surveys. We send interviews around, you name it. So all of this is centralized in a single location in Product Board and by automation distributed to the right product managers. We read it, we process every tiny piece of information on a regular basis. And like I mentioned, I used to be a customer of Product Board, and oftentimes I shared feedback on how to improve things. And when I joined Product Board, I was able to find every single piece of feedback I shared properly, assigned to the right bucket, which was very nice and assuring that this company is actually practicing what it's teaching.
So that was what Miro had to say about customer feedback at Product Board. Now, back to our interview.
When I first started in a growth stage startup, it was actually my first time in a private company that was like more than 100 people. And I started taking notes on the things that I learned about people's personal lives and stuff like that, because I was like, okay, I need to learn who these people are and get to know them, like them as humans. And it went a long way.
Oh yeah. Like I said, first thing I did when I got to Seven Lakes was just I wanted to do a tour of the people and a tour of the customers. I wanted to learn some of the faces there and learn where they were at and what their work lives are at and just let them see me here and just hear their stories because their stories are more interesting than mine.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think hearing their stories is really valuable. So what did Seven Lakes do?
So Seven Lakes, this is interesting here. Let me set it up with IQVIA and then get to Seven Lakes. So this is the interesting part. So I'd been at Citrix there, wasn't satisfied, decided I was looking for a change, and I knew some people working at IQVIA, which is a big CRO, clinical research organization that had merged with a large medical health organization. So this is monster company that deals in clinical trials. Now this is late 2019, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, clinical trials. I did a lot of work when I was at WestStat for the CDC in the medical area. Let's get back into it. Clinical trial sounds interesting. So I get there in January of 2020, work with a product that helps develop clinical trial strategies. As I like to joke, working on the roadmaps, working on the backlogs. I had them all. I had my business case approved and I had all my backlogs and everything neat and tidy on March 10th of 2020, was ready to start rolling the following.
Oh boy.
Yeah, this is what I tell people, like, this is where I learned if you know the customer, if you know the market, you know the jobs, you have a little more resiliency than if you're focused just on features and getting the next shiny thing out the door. Because just like every CRO in the world at that point decided that for whatever reasons, on March 15th, their focus was just going to be on one particular issue.
Gosh, I wonder.
Yeah, so that was interesting there. And I did that for a while. And, I got a call out of the blue I'd been there for about a year and a half, got a call out of the blue saying, look, we got this growth stage startup called Seven Lakes. They're in upstream oil and gas. So they're creating software for the people who are who go explore, find, and get natural gas and oil out of the ground here. It deals with a lot of SCADA, where they have all these monitors and all these devices.
I'm sorry, SCADA? What's a SCADA?
SCADA. It's basically, it's a system, it's supervisory control and data acquisition. So think of IoT.
Okay.
So you got all these sensors in all these places here, and they just send phone home. Oh no, you need to get someone here and take a look at this.
Yep.
All right. And you imagine they have these great expanses here in the US and elsewhere or offshore where they have to send people to either do maintenance or either regular maintenance or emergency maintenance. So you have these people who spend a lot of windshield time and pick up trucks on the flattest places on earth I've ever seen, in the most hostile conditions I've ever seen. And how do you take that one person and have them maintain or keep maintenance of 150 or 200 wells over several hundred acres of land here? And of course, I tell this recruiter here, this white label recruiter, I was like, nah, it sounds to me like you're looking for a CPO. I just don't know and I said, I know what you need here, but I don't know if I'm the right guy for this.
Yeah.
So we went back and forth for a few months. He finally talked me into it. So I was like, all right, this will be my chance to maybe have a dude over. Go back to what it was like when I was at school and say, hey, what did I do wrong? Or what didn't I do that I could do better here at Seven Lakes? Went there. And of course, our customers, there were oil companies of various sizes. There's a lot of small operators, very small operators out there. And we span from small operators up to large companies like Exxon. And what was interesting there, because again, this is where understanding how to respond to changing market conditions. And this is where I really am thankful for a lot of my agile training that I've received, being responsive to change and keeping your pulse on the finger of the market here, and my work in analytics. Because this is where it really paid off. Because when I got there, again, just similar to what happened at IQVIA, oil and gas was at $55 a barrel. So it was interesting there because that sort of governed how these companies work. It was pretty low, so it was all about cost saving.
Oh yeah. I've heard that it changes a lot, right? Depending on the oil market.
Within a few months, it's doubled up to 110. And again, all these roadmaps I had, all these plans, guess what? The market's no longer buying for these reasons. So how do you finish up the work you have at hand? How do you pivot there? And like I said, it was an interesting growth stage startup. They eventually exited through an acquisition through W Energy. But it was a lot of fun working there because, again, I got to do a lot of things. For example, brought in a sense of analytics, brought in a sense of, hey, we need to really start focusing on the problems at hand here. In other words, how do we work in a way that it's more connected here? So we didn't have some of the disconnects we ran into when I was at a place like school do that. It was early in its growth at that time.
Yep. So how did you not have those disconnects?
I think a lot of it was, like I said, learning from my mistakes. First, a lot of it was understanding that there are processes, there are artifacts, there are documents that you can have and share. For example, treating the roadmap like a strategic communications device instead of a Gantt chart. Rethinking how the teams are set up, working with the head of IT. So we can say, look, we actually want to have these teams working more with high autonomy and high accountability as trying to make this top down. There's no way we're going to scale and grow, continue having top down communication here. So working with the head of engineering, and together we were able to say, look, this isn't on us about telling you what you have to do each day. This is about you understanding the value. I think the biggest thing was rebooting. There's a product who had the pleasure of leading here. And some of these people, their degrees, their pedigrees, where they went to school, their experience. I had one who had gone to Harvard, had degrees in mechanical engineering, had worked on oil rigs, knew the domain. But when I watched them work with teams, when I watched them do their product demos, one of the biggest things I left them with was the ability to reframe arguments. I think the biggest thing I taught them was, and it was one of the things I had to learn the hard way coming from a technical background, was our customers, our stakeholders, our engineering team all speak to us in solution speak.
Yes, it's very powerful.
Because it's the only language they really know. There's a few that don't, but most of them speak to us in solution speak. And it was great joy to see how I was able to get these women and gentlemen to evolve to anytime they would be presented with solution speak, to reframe it back into the problem space. One of the best examples, we had a customer who had an old piece of software there. They had these lease operators and these pickup trucks driving around with big old Windows laptops with something that was this compiled version of Microsoft Access that gave them 3 or 4 charts and to see how various wells were producing. And they came to us saying, look, this software is nowhere supported. It's been around for 15 years or something here. We need you to rewrite it. And of course, they're coming to us saying, they want it just like the product.
Yep, exactly the same.
And of course, I'm telling the CEO and the CMO, I'm not rebuilding a web version or a mobile version of Microsoft Access. That's not going to happen. So it really was a conversation of how we reframe it. So I come into the conversations, and one of the conversations I have with some of these directors is, tell me what you really want these lease operators to do. What is the 2 or 3 things they need to do most with the data here? Because I noticed every day they have to come into the depot and download all the data here. What is it you're trying to get? And we want them to be able to see these 3 or 4 charts here because these various intersections on these various visuals, that tells them where they need to prioritize or need to be more alert on their work. And I'm like, okay. So you're giving them autonomy, which is good, to make decisions on data, which is good. I think, but do we really want them to become data scientists or database DBAs? We're giving them a lot of data. We're making them swim through queries. We're making them having to go through this higher. What happens if we were just to give them these charts every day? So when they come in, it's on their phone. What if we were just able to give them that information? And so we started reframing the conversation around the problem, the job to be done, as opposed to the system to be rebuilt. And we were able to there was some back and forth. We did have to give them a certain amount of data, give them some other capabilities, but we definitely did not rebuild Microsoft Access for a mobile phone. And it was a much lighter and faster application. And the lease operators absolutely loved it because it was much smaller, much lighter, got to the job. You're talking about people. A lot of the people they hire to be lease operators are engineer type. And I'm talking about, but let's take the wrench and fix the well types, where they have to be mechanical engineers and electrical engineers and have some understanding of chemistry all at the same time here. A lot of them have military backgrounds and they just didn't have the heart and desire to swim through so it's just give me the data. So by reframing the conversation around the job to be done, moving the conversation back to the problem space, we were then able to go back to the solution space with something that we could afford to build and something that was much more productive for the people actually using it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, it sounds like you've worked in a variety of different industries and roles, but now you're at 280 Group. So what do you do there?
Yeah. So I'm teaching people from my experiences, both good, bad, and ugly. I'm teaching from the experience of others that have provided the curriculum for a 280 group. So on any given week, I could be teaching agile product management. One of the things I didn't tell you about the history was when I was at Dude Solutions, I'd gotten introduced to Agile when I went to a few Microsoft conferences. When I went to McClatchy, they were definitely doing Agile, and I had the blessing of Bob Galen showing up and helping being one of the coaches there.
Sure. And for any listeners who don't know, who's Bob Galen?
So Bob Galen, he's an author. He's a well-known Agile coach. He's a coach of Agile coaches. His most recent book is Extraordinary Badass Agile Coaching, The Journey from Beginner to Mastery and Beyond. And he's a local here in the Raleigh area, but he's well-known around the world for his Agile foo. And and so once you learn from at the feet of Bob, you can't not learn how to be Agile here. It's just impossible. One of the things I was at 280, I teach the Agile product management course. I teach digital product management, which is a type of course that I would wish we had when I got to School Dude, and I wish I realized was available when I got to Seven Lakes, because I would have just said, all right, here's how we take all these 1,000 things we have to do with these hundreds of people we have to talk to and keep us focused on value. And then I teach the optimal product management as well, which also is less geared around the product-led growth than the digital product management. But we find that it's people who, like I said, for larger organizations and organizations who may not just be working in software have found this valuable as well. So teaching these classes and doing some consulting along with that has just been really rewarding because, as you probably see in my profile here, there is the worst kept secret on the internet with my deep, dark secret of a secret past life as an opera singer.
Yes, I remember seeing that, yeah.
And please don't tell anyone. Let's just make this our secret here. But yeah, one of the reasons I got into product management was the fact that I did miss the people part of it when I was just doing the engineering. I do love the sprint review, the product demo, whatever you want to call it here. One of the things I've always left any organization I've been with is the storytelling. And I feel, if nothing else, that's one of the things I love. Like I said, when I was at Seven Lakes, I was really, and even when I left IQVIA, I was really proud of the culture of storytelling we had inculcated those groups with. I did the same thing when I was at Aprimo.
Yeah. So why is storytelling so valuable?
Just all of opera is nothing but storytelling at scale. But it's actually done incrementally. And that's the interesting thing here. When you're putting together a show, whether it's a new or an old show, when you're actually performing a show, you're incrementally building on various notions here. And so the storytelling, I got into theater when I was 6.
Uh-huh.
And I worked professionally there. I did summer stock. I've done professional work. And for me, it's just the storytelling, because I was never the star. I was never the star tenor. I was never the love interest here. I was always either the comic or the villain. And for me, because we're the catalyst, we're the character they actually put into the story to move things along. So after someone has come up and stopped the show with some big aria, they put the brakes on everything, they send a knucklehead like me in to come in and just move the plot along here. And isn't that what we do in product? We keep moving the plot along. After whatever's happened, great release, a disastrous delivery, at some point we need to come in either as that comic or that villain and keep the show going, despite the fact that children may have stolen the wagon that was supposed to come on stage and they're in the parking lot playing with it now, or lights fall and people in the orchestra booby trapping my chairs. But I'm not bitter about any of those incidents.
Not at all, clearly. You're never bitter about that happening.
Not at all. No.
Awesome. This has been really fun. I'm afraid we're about out of time. Where can people find you if they want to follow you?
Sure, they can find me at LinkedIn. Just look up LinkedIn Dean Peters. They can find me at Twitter at Dean Peters. And they can look Dean Peters at the 280 group if you want to have me come in and provide you with some training that will not be boring. I can at least guarantee that, and will come with a host of stories from both my past and that of others. For me, it's just a passion now to start sending the ladder down. As you can tell from the graying and missing hair, I really feel it's my job now to send a ladder down to an emerging generation of product manager awesomeness.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Dean. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today.
Holly, thank you for having me on my show. This was really fun. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. The Product Science Podcast is brought to you by H2R Product Science. We teach startup founders and product leaders how to use the product science method to discover the strongest product opportunities and lay the foundations for high-growth products, teams, and businesses. Learn more at h2rproductscience.com. Enjoying this episode? Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. I also encourage you to visit us at productsciencepodcast.com to sign up for more information and resources from me and our guests. If you like the show, a rating and review would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.